A man is sitting in the Arizona desert with his sleeve rolled up. There is a small mesh cage strapped to his forearm, and inside the cage, there is an insect. He has a notebook open on his knee and a pen in his other hand. He is not trying to get away. He is waiting. His name was Justin Schmidt, and he was an entomologist. Over about 40 years, he built the only pain scale most people have ever heard of. It runs from 1 to 4. 1 is a mosquito. 4 is the top of the world. The published index covers 83 species, wasps, bees, ants, and because a number on its own tells you nothing about what a thing feels like, Schmidt wrote a description for every single one in the voice of a man reviewing a restaurant. The tarantula hawk scores 4. He described it as a running hairdryer dropped into your bubble bath. The bullet ant scores 4+, which is a number he had to invent because nothing else reached it. That one he described as walking over flaming charcoal with a nail driven through your heel. Now, it is easy to file this under eccentric scientist. But look at what he was actually doing, because it is stranger than it looks. He was trying to solve a problem that medicine had not solved either. He was trying to find a unit. We can measure everything else. Heat has degrees, sound has decibels, weight has grams, distance has meters, and every one of those can be checked by a machine that does not care what you say about it. Pain has nothing. And that missing unit is why the chart at the top of every video about this question was never an experiment. So here is what we are going to do. We are going to climb. We will start near the bottom of what a human body can produce and go up, rung by rung, to the worst pain there is, and I will number them as we go so you know how far we have left. I want to be honest with you about the shape of this before we start, because it will keep you watching for the right reason. We do reach the top. But the thing at the top of the ladder is not the pain you are expecting, and by the time we get there, the ladder itself will not be standing up. Go to a hospital in pain, and someone will ask you to rate it out of 10. That question is not lazy. It is the best instrument that exists. There is no machine in that building that can look at you and return a number. A scan can show a tumor pressing on a nerve. It cannot show what that feels like. A blood test can show inflammation. It cannot tell you whether the person is comfortable or whether they have not slept in 9 days. And in a moment, I am going to tell you about a man who walked into a hospital in Leicester with the worst pain of his life and no injury at all. Not a thermometer, not a scan, not a blood test. The only instrument for pain that has ever worked is a person telling you about it. And that fact is going to matter more and more as we climb. In 1975, a psychologist at McGill University in Montreal named Ronald Melzack tried to fix this properly. He had noticed something that everyone had been ignoring. When people describe pain, they do not reach for numbers, they reach for words. And the words are not decoration. Throbbing is a different problem from burning. Shooting is a different problem from gnawing. A doctor who hears stabbing and a doctor who hears crushing are, quite often, looking for 2 different diseases in 2 different organs. So Melzack collected the words, 78 of them, sorted into 20 groups, and he ranked them inside each group from mild to unbearable. You do not give a number. You circle the words that are true, and the form turns your words into a score. It is called the McGill Pain Questionnaire, and it is still used today. Try something, because it takes 20 seconds and it will make the rest of this video make sense. Press the nail of your thumb into the palm of your other hand, not hard. Now increase it slowly and keep going until you decide to stop. You just stop somewhere. Now, where was that decision made? It was not made in your thumb. Your thumb has no opinion. The nerve endings in your palm were sending the same kind of traffic the whole way up, getting stronger, and at some point something above them decided that was enough. Hold on to that, because it is the whole video. And it explains the thing that makes every pain scale on Earth slightly useless. Your 7 and my 7 are not the same 7. There is no way to check. 2 people with the same injury, the same age, the same everything will hand you 2 different numbers, and neither of them is lying. Which is why the number out of 10 is not really a measurement at all. It is only useful against itself. A 7 today and a 4 tomorrow tells your doctor something real. Your 7 against somebody else's 7 tells them nothing whatsoever. In 1965, Melzack and a British scientist called Patrick Wall had already shown why that is possible. Pain signals are not a telephone line running straight from your skin to your head. They pass through gates on the way, and those gates can be opened wider or closed down. which means the number you report is not a reading taken off your skin. It is the end of a decision your nervous system has already made about how much danger you are in. And that is also why the people who cannot feel any of this, and there are such people, are the ones who die first. Right. The ladder. We are starting at number 6, and I am going to be quick with the ones you already know, because the interesting part is higher up. Number 6. A kidney stone. A deposit the size of a grain of rice moves into a tube that is not designed to let anything solid through, and the tube grips it and tries to squeeze it along. People who have had one and have also given birth are the reason it keeps showing up on these lists at all. Number 5. Childbirth. And here we hit the first real problem with ranking pains, so I want to flag it now rather than at the end. Some people describe labor as the worst thing that ever happened to them. Others describe it as hard work. Both are telling the truth. Same event, same biology, wildly different reports. If pain were a measurement of tissue damage, that could not happen, and it happens constantly. Number 4, burns. Not the burn, the dressing change. A serious burn has to be cleaned and recovered sometimes daily, and the tissue underneath is raw nerve with nothing over it. Burn units schedule these around the strongest pain relief they are allowed to give, and it is still one of the most feared procedures in medicine. There is a detail here that sounds like a small mercy and is not. A burn deep enough to destroy the nerve endings stops hurting in that spot, so the areas that scream are the shallower ones. In a burns unit, pain is a sign the tissue is still alive. And notice what is already falling apart. Not the sharpest injury, not the loudest signal, not the most damage. None of those are tracking with what people actually report, and we are only at number 4. Again, because the top of this ladder is not made of injuries at all. From here on, every single one is a fault in the alarm system itself. Number 3, cluster headache. It arrives on one side of the head, always the same side, usually around one eye. It lasts between 15 minutes and 3 hours. And then it comes back, sometimes at the same hour, night after night, for weeks. About 1 person in 1,000 has this. It has a second name in the medical literature, and the name is not a metaphor or a nickname somebody invented for a documentary. It is called the suicide headache, and it is called that because of what patients do during attacks. People with cluster headache do not lie still. Migraine sends people to a dark room to keep still. This does the opposite. They pace, they rock, they press their head into walls because the pain is so demanding that doing nothing is impossible. That difference is a diagnosis, not a personality. It is one of the ways the condition is identified. And it is the first thing on our ladder that no injury explains. Nothing is broken, nothing is bleeding, and there is nothing to point at on a scan. Number 2, trigeminal neuralgia. The trigeminal nerve carries sensation from your face. When it misfires, the signal it sends is not an ache. It is described, almost universally, as an electric shock. And what sets it off is the cruel part. Not injury, a cold breeze on the cheek, shaving, brushing your teeth, chewing, ordinary contact that everybody else on Earth receives thousands of times a day without noticing. So people stop. They stop eating on that side, then they stop eating properly. They stop washing their face, they stop talking because talking moves the jaw. The condition has been called the suicide disease for well over a century, and it earned that name in an era with almost nothing to offer for it. Look at what these two have in common, because it is about to become the point. In both cases, the body is fine, the wiring is not. Number 1, complex regional pain syndrome. And this one starts in the most ordinary way possible. Somebody breaks a wrist, or sprains an ankle, or has a minor operation on a hand, something small, something that heals. The injury heals on schedule. The scan comes back clean, and the pain does not stop. It spreads outward from where the injury was, past the edges of it, into a whole hand or a whole foot. The limb can change color and temperature. It can sweat or swell, or the hair and nails on it can start growing differently. And then, the ordinary world turns hostile. A bedsheet resting on the skin becomes unbearable. Cold air becomes unbearable. Being touched by someone you love becomes something you have to ask them to stop doing. This is number 1 on almost every version of this list you will ever see. And this is where you have been given a number, 42 out of 50, above amputation, above childbirth, on a chart labeled the McGill Pain Index. If you have watched anything else on this subject, you have seen it. It is the single most shared image in the whole field. So let us go and look at that chart properly because I went looking for the study behind it. There isn't one. The McGill Pain Questionnaire is real, and I described it to you 20 minutes ago, 78 words, 20 groups, and a maximum score of 78, not 50. It is a form you fill in about your own pain on the day in a clinic. It does not rank conditions against each other. It never did. It was not built to. Nobody ever gathered people with CRPS and people in labor and people with a broken finger into one experiment and put their pain in a league table, because you cannot ethically or practically run that study. The chart is a folk object. Numbers from separate studies on separate groups at separate times collected onto one image by people who wanted to be believed and who mostly had very good reason to want that because they were in pain nobody could see. I am not telling you the chart is a lie. I am telling you it is not a measurement, and there is no measurement. Which does not make anyone on it a liar. Not confused, not exaggerating. Every condition we just climbed through is real, recognized, and documented. The latter is the invention. The suffering is not. So if the number is not a measurement of damage, what is it measuring? Here is the man from Leicester. January 1995. A builder, 29 years old, jumps down onto a plank. There is a 15-centimeter nail sticking out of it. The nail goes straight through his boot, and he arrives at the emergency department at Leicester Royal Infirmary in agony. He is in so much pain that the smallest movement of the nail is unbearable. They cannot examine him. So they sedate him, fentanyl and midazolam, which is serious pain relief, and they pull the nail out from underneath. Then they take the boot off. The nail had gone in beside the steel toe cap, and it had passed cleanly between two of his toes. It never touched him. His foot was completely uninjured, not a puncture, not a graze, nothing. And his pain had been absolutely real, not imagined, not performed, real enough to need fentanyl. That is a single case report, 4 sentences long, printed in the British Medical Journal in 1995. It is not a study, and I am not going to pretend it proves anything on its own. But it is the cleanest illustration anybody has of the thing we keep circling. His eyes saw a nail through his boot. His body knew what that means, and his nervous system produced the pain that a foot with a nail through it deserves, correctly, efficiently, and on the basis of no injury whatsoever. Now the same thing running the other way. 1944, the Anzio beachhead in Italy. An American anesthetist named Henry Beecher is working with men who have been very badly wounded, the kind of wounds that would put a civilian into surgery immediately. He asked 225 of them about their pain. About 3/4 of them turned down morphine. They did not need it. The severity of the wound did not predict the pain, and Beecher's explanation was that for these men, the wound meant the war was over, and they were going home alive. Same tissue. Same damage, a different meaning, and the pain follows the meaning, not the tissue. Medicine has a name for the gap between those two things. Nociception is the nerve traffic, the raw signal running up from the tissue. Pain is what your brain decides to do with it. In 2020, the international body that defines these terms restated the principle plainly. You cannot work out someone's pain from their nerve activity. The two come apart in both directions. And if you want the cleanest proof that pain does not need tissue, it is not a laboratory result. It is the most common experience in amputation. More than 9 out of 10 people who lose a limb continue to feel it afterwards, not remember it. Feel it, its position, its weight, whether the fingers are open or closed. The brain has a map of your body, and the map does not update when the body changes. The region that handled that hand carries on working. And for somewhere between half and 3/4 of amputees, what it produces is not a sensation. It is pain. People describe a hand that is clenched so tightly the nails are cutting into the palm and they cannot open it because there is no hand to open. They describe burning in fingers that were cremated years ago. It can last decades. In the 1990s, a neuroscientist named Vilayana Ramachandran tried something almost silly. He put a mirror beside the remaining arm so the reflection sat where the missing one should be, and he asked people to move both hands at once. Some of them felt the phantom fist unclench. You cannot treat an injury that does not exist. He was not treating the hand. He was arguing with the map. Northern Pakistan, the early 2000s. There is a boy who performs in the street for money, and his act is very simple. He pushes knives through his arms, he walks over burning coals, then he collects the money, and the wounds are treated, and he does it again the following week. He is not enduring it. He feels nothing. Doctors studying his family found the reason, and in 2006, it was published in Nature, a single gene called SCN9A. It builds a sodium channel in the nerve endings that detect damage, the gate that lets the signal start at all. 6 people across 3 related families had it. Their nervous systems were otherwise normal. Normal intelligence, normal touch, normal temperature, normal lives. They simply could not produce pain, and every one of them was covered in injuries they had never noticed. The children had bitten through their own lips and tongues before they were 4 years old because nothing told them to stop. Broken bones went undiagnosed. Infections were found late or found by somebody else. The boy in the street was well known to the local doctors. They wanted to study him properly. They never got the chance. He died on his 14th birthday after jumping off a house roof. He had been jumping off things his whole life. That is the point. Nothing had ever told him what jumping off things costs, so he had never had the lesson the rest of us got at 4 years old and forgot immediately. So here is the thing that ruins the question we started with. We have spent this whole video ranking pain as though it were the enemy, and the only people on earth who are free of it do not live to 20. Pain is the reason you pull your hand back before you have thought about it. It is the reason you limp so the ankle gets to heal. It is the reason a burn teaches you something once instead of every day for the rest of your life. It is not the injury. It is the thing standing between you and the next one. An alarm that hurts is doing its job. The problem is never the alarm. The problem is an alarm that will not switch off after the fire is out. And that, all the way back at number 1, is exactly what CRPS is. There is one more group of people, and they are the strangest of all because they break the question from the opposite side. A doctor pricks their hand with a pin. They confirm that it hurts. They can tell you where and how much. And then they smile. Some of them laugh. It is called pain asymbolia, and it turns up after damage to a region called the insula. The sensation arrives perfectly intact. What is missing is the part that makes it matter to them. In 1988, it was described as a sensory limbic disconnection. The pain gets in and then finds nothing to connect to, which tells you that the hurting and the suffering are 2 different machines, and only one of them is what we have been trying to rank. So, not a punishment, not a design flaw, not something you would remove if somebody offered, which finally lets us answer the question honestly. The worst pain a human can feel is not the sharpest one. Every pain on our ladder stops. The kidney stone passes. The burn closes. Even the cluster headache lets go after 3 hours. The worst pain is the one that does not have an end because there is no injury left for it to be about. And there is a second half to that, which is the part I actually wanted to make this video about. The worst pain is the one that does not show up on anything, because when there is nothing on the scan, people stop believing you. The CRPS patient, the cluster headache patient, the builder in Leicester, every one of them had a pain with no picture to prove it. That is why the McGill questionnaire asked for words. It was not a workaround for the lack of a machine. Melzack's actual argument was that the words are the data, that a person describing their own pain carefully is not a substitute for the measurement, because there is nothing else and there never was. Which takes us back to Arizona, and the man with the cage strapped to his arm. Justin Schmidt spent 40 years building the only pain scale anyone remembers, and he did it on a body he could stop hurting whenever he wanted. He could take his arm out of the cage. Everyone at the top of our ladder is in a cage they cannot open, and that, not the number, is the difference between 4 out of 4 and the worst pain a human can feel. He died in 2023. The scale is still the one everybody quotes, and it still works the only way any pain scale has ever worked. Somebody feels something, somebody else writes down the number they are given. Nothing here is medical advice, and where the science is unsettled, I have tried to say so. If you are the person whose scan came back clean, the honest summary of about 60 years of pain research is this: there is no instrument, there never was. The only one that has ever existed is somebody willing to believe you.